savings account, checking account, and now cryptocurrency account.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by UKG. Ultimate Kronos Group offers HR solutions to connect modern workforces. UKG.com. Our purpose is people. And by Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, where research on how cancer cells get oxygen led to development of kidney cancer drugs and more. danafarber.org/everywhere.
I'm David Brancaccio. First, you may recall California voters passing a measure to exempt the Uber, Lyft, and DoorDashers of the world from having to classify workers as employees instead of independent contractors. Well, now a union and some drivers are challenging the exemptions, Marketplace's Nova Safo reports.
David, this lawsuit in California state court is a new front in the effort to get employee benefits for gig workers in the state. They filed that suit in California state court in Alameda County. Benefits such as sick leave and unemployment insurance will be part of it if the gig workers are reclassified. And these are part of tough rules that California worker rules that were passed and went into effect last year. Companies, Uber, Lyft, and others poured more than $200 million into a campaign to get the Prop 22 ballot initiative passed. It exempted ride-hail drivers from those state rules. The companies won in November. Now this lawsuit is challenging that victory, saying Prop 22 violates the state constitution because it prevents the legislature from doing its job, from granting additional rights to workers.
Now, have we heard from Uber or Lyft about this latest lawsuit?
Well, we've reached out to them, both. It's a bit early on the West Coast. We haven't heard back, but we have heard from a group of drivers that supported Prop 22. And they say the lawsuit is brought by special interests who are refusing to accept that most drivers want to remain independent. When we know Uber and Lyft have said that if they had to change their policies, they might have to exit the California market altogether. That's how big a change it would be for them, David.
All right, Nova Safo, thank you. There's news that BNY Mellon, the country's oldest bank, plans to offer cryptocurrency services to its clients. The company says it'll provide the infrastructure to store, transfer, and issue what it calls digital assets. Marketplace's Justin Ho has that.
Storing cryptocurrency like Bitcoin hasn't always been easy. People have to worry about hackers and keep track of passwords for their digital wallets.
And the passwords on a Post-it note that gets lost or on a hard drive that gets lost, and those coins disappear.
Nate Tobick with Complete Bank Data says mainstream banks like BNY Mellon offer a layer of legitimacy, cybersecurity protections, capital requirements. NYU finance professor David Yermak says that's appealing to bigger institutional investors like hedge funds and university endowments that might be holding some cryptocurrency in their portfolios.
And they need somebody to be the custodian, just like they would if they were investing in the stock market or the bond market.
Yermak says that while more mainstream companies are looking into cryptocurrency, it doesn't mean we'll see widespread adoption.
But it greatly expands people's opportunity to spend it if they happen to own it for one reason or another.
BNY Mellon says its services will start later this year. I'm Justin Ho for Marketplace.
Dow and NASDAQ futures are each down 0.2%. The S&P future down by slightly more. What does coronavirus do to economic activity? There's news today the British economy shrank by 9.9% in 2020, the biggest contraction on record. What about World War II, you say? I had the same question. Turns out Britain's statistical office didn't start calculating GDP like this until after the war. In the U.S., according to preliminary figures, the economy contracted by 3.5% during that ridiculous year we've just been through.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by GEP, helping transform supply chains with strategies, services, and software, including GEP Smart and GEP Next, AI-based digital procurement and supply chain platforms. And by C3.ai. C3.ai software enables organizations to use artificial intelligence at enterprise scale, solving previously unsolvable business problems. Learn more at C3.ai. And by X-Chair, maker of the X2 home office chair with dynamic variable lumbar support, donating to Gladstone Research Institute to fight COVID-19 at xchair.com.
President Biden has ordered the executive branch to dig into rules and regulations to root out discrimination. This week, the Department of Housing and Urban Development said it's extending protections against housing discrimination to include LGBTQ people. Marketplace's Kimberly Adams reports.
The Department of Housing and Urban Development is responsible for enforcing the Fair Housing Act, which says you can't discriminate against people in certain protected classes. One of those classes is sex. The Biden administration says it will interpret and enforce that as including sexual orientation and gender identity. That's a step forward, says Christy Mallory, legal director at the Williams Institute at UCLA School of Law.
Right now, LGBTQ people in the country face a patchwork of protections from housing discrimination, essentially based on where they live.
The new interpretation of the law doesn't just cover renting apartments.
It also covers folks engaged in housing transactions in many different contexts.
Spencer Watson runs the Center for LGBTQ Economic Advancement and Research.
So it includes housing situations that are shelters. It also protects individuals against discrimination in mortgage transactions and real estate transactions.
A change like this could be undone by a future administration, and advocates expect legal challenges. But in the meantime, they hope following this rule will become a normal part of being a landlord.
If people are engaged in the housing market, they have obligations to follow, whether that's fire codes, whether that's providing a secure and safe place to live.
Aaron Tax is with SAGE, a group that advocates for LGBT older adults.
And now we can add something else to that list, which is making sure that they don't discriminate against people based on their sexual orientation and gender identity.
HUD said it will also tie federal housing funds for local programs to enforcement of its expanded rules and will investigate discrimination complaints from as far back as January 20th of last year. In Washington, I'm Kimberly Adams for Marketplace.
And 3 published reports suggest the Biden administration today will end the Trump-era stipulation that poor people have to work to get Medicaid health care benefits. The Washington Post reports it had seen a draft of the Biden plan. Courts had already put on hold work requirements in the 3 states to adopt them, Arkansas, Kentucky, and New Hampshire. I'm David Brancaccio with the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.